Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to In Real Life with Evan Halprin. Recently, 2 days ago, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, said that he does not want to pay to use the Suez or the Panama Canal anymore for both military and commercial ships registered in the United States of America. He tweeted out on Truth Social. So it wasn't really a tweet, it was a truth. I don't know what they call them. American ships, both military and commercial, should be allowed to travel free of charge through Panama and Suez canals. Those canals would not exist without the United States of America. And he continued on in the tweet and said that he had asked Secretary of State Marco Rubio to memorialize this, to work on this as quickly as possible. This was something that Trump had made an issue for a while. In the State of the Union, he mentioned Panama 6 times, more than any other country. And he has already threatened to retake the Panama Canal in January and February. And one of his big issues is China's influence around and in the canal, which goes against the treaty signed, the Torrijos-Carter Treaty, that was signed in 1976. And he believes that Panama is not following this treaty to the best of their abilities. And so he definitely has a case to be made for the Panama Canal. The Suez Canal, I believe, is a little bit of a stretch. I'm not exactly sure if you can claim that that canal would not exist, but some history of the Panama Canal, because for the Panama Canal, it's absolutely true. So the Panama Canal construction began in 1904 and was finished in 1913, 1914, and it officially opened in 1914. And then President Jimmy Carter, in 1976, made a deal with the president of Panama at the time, and the Torrijos-Carter Treaty, as it was called, began to gradually give control to Panama of the Panama Canal. And then that treaty completely gave control of the Panama Canal to Panama in 1999, officially. But I'm going to go through the treaty of the Panama Canal, and you're going to understand very quickly, very briefly, why Donald Trump believes that he can take over the Panama Canal. So, there are 8 articles and an annex. The annex just basically defines the words used in the articles, so I'm not going to go over that, but I will go over all 8 articles, even the ones that are not so important to this issue, and I will embolden on Article 4, because that is really why Donald Trump thinks he has precedent to retake the Panama Canal. So the first article just very basically declares the Panama Canal available to all countries, says the Panama Canal is neutral, and any recognized country can use it. And Article 2 says that all countries must be treated equally in the canal, unless otherwise stated in following articles, and that there can also be no violent interactions in the canal. Right? So, if for some reason Ukraine and Russia run into each other in the Panama Canal, they cannot then fight. Article 3 says that all ships can use the canal for any reason as long as they follow the rest of the articles, as long as they follow the rest of the rules. I feel like that's fairly reasonable. And then Article 4, really the important article, says that the United States and Panama are able to militarily ensure that the treaties are being followed. And so what Donald Trump has said is that he believes, he has seen, he has been told that China has an excess of power, specifically Beijing, in the Panama Canal, and that Panama is letting this happen. And so basically, what we can surmise from Article 4 is that he does, in fact, have the ability to send troops to retake the Panama Canal. Now, the Panama Canal should never have left U.S. control in the first place. It was a misstep of a treaty. It was a misstep of foreign policy by Jimmy Carter. But unfortunately, that's in the past. That can't be changed. I, in fact, did not vote for Jimmy Carter. If you're listening to this, most likely you, in fact, did not vote for Jimmy Carter. And that's not because this is conservative. That's just because he served as president almost 60 years ago. And we unfortunately can't change that this treaty was made. But what we can do is we can retake control of the Panama Canal if the treaty is not being followed. And really, that's fairly subjective, unfortunately, as most foreign policy is. Or maybe that's fortunately for Donald Trump, because then he would have an increase in power on trade, and he can absolutely push that as a positive for his foreign policy. Article 5 says, should the treaty be terminated, only Panama should operate and protect the canal. And so this is, it just means that if there's another treaty that is made, if they scrap this treaty and create the Panama Canal Trump Treaty, as it would probably be called, because he is a little bit full of himself, that would mean that the new treaty would be followed and that Panama would retain control of the canal, or unless the treaty says otherwise. Because of their role in the development of the canal, this is Article 6, both countries' ships, government ships, both war and non-war ships, should have priority over other ships. And America, Panama, Costa Rica, and Colombia may have toll-free transit in some cases, should their governments feel that it's necessary. And this is pretty reasonable, right? You help build the canal, you're there in the beginning. I see no reason why you can't get some type of a perk of just having priority if your military or other government ship needs to go somewhere. You get to go first. And Article 7 presented the ability for all countries to sign the treaty. It kind of built on the Article 1 that just declared the canal available to all countries, and as soon as you sign the treaty, you are able to use the canal just as everybody else. And then Article 8 puts the treaty into effect 6 months after signed, which is why it was signed in 1976 but officially went into effect in 1977. The Suez Canal is much more complicated, obviously located in Egypt, because the United States did not help build the canal. And so it's a little bit harder to claim that the Suez Canal would not exist without the United States of America. But here's how, if you wanted to, you could do it. So the Suez Canal was built by France and Egypt. However, during the Suez Canal crisis, which is when three countries, France, Great Britain, and Egypt, Great Britain, France, and Egypt invaded Israel in 1956. America protected Egypt, protected the Suez Canal, and called for the removal of all three countries from Egypt. And being a world superpower, they were listened to. So they did, and they do constantly protect the Suez Canal and its sovereignty in Egypt from Europeans, from wherever you are going to claim that Israel is from, and from the rest of the Arab world, and a little bit from Africa. So that is a way that absolutely Trump could claim that Panama and the Suez Canal would not exist without the United States of America, and as such should be able to travel free of charge. Now, I don't believe that it's a right for us to travel free of charge through the Suez Canal. It is somewhat of a right for us to travel free of charge through the Panama Canal, especially because we should have control over it. And because of Panama's mismanagement, we now can take control of it. I don't believe we have a right to travel free of charge through the Suez Canal. However, if you are big and strong, as the United States is right now, if you have a strong leader, as the United States does right now, and you can encroach on other countries, get them to concede things to you, such as passage through canals free of charge, for the country that is doing the encroaching, this can only be seen as a win on the world stage. I'm sure that somebody can find something wrong with what Trump is doing. They can say that he's being mean, but at the end of the day, he is performing in the best interests of America, and it will be interesting to see how he continues this path. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. This is a little bit of a shorter episode, a little bit more of a historical episode today. But I enjoyed it. I hope you did. And I will see you shortly. Have a great rest of your day. Get out of here.